Hi, I'm Dr. Kathy Judkins and you're watching Effective Study Strategies. I'll be reviewing specific study strategies, including some highly effective ones that have been identified in memory research. These study techniques can lay a foundation of good study habits and improve your child's academic achievement. This video will be helpful if your child has not been taught study skills at school or if he needs a refresher course. It is also helpful for parents who are seeking strategies to assist their children learn better skills. When I ask children and adolescents that I see in therapy how they study for tests, the vast majority tell me that they just look over their notes. One thing we know for sure is that simply looking over notes does not result in good retention of information. It usually results in mediocre grades at best. Most parents I know tell their kids that as long as they are giving their best effort in school, and of course not failing, that they are fine with the grades they bring home. More often than not though, children's study habits can use a little fine-tuning, and that is the motivation behind this video. Learning begins in class when teachers lecture, and we consider this the first step in the learning process. This learning can be considered passive. Students listen while the teacher reviews the concepts, but they are not necessarily doing anything active with it. There are certainly active learning components to the school day. For instance, students will practice math problems or do science experiments, but the time that students spend at school working with the material presented in their classes is usually insufficient for them to retain that information long term. The information needs to be practiced and worked with again and again at home. So the second step in learning the things being taught at school is having children do homework. For the material to be committed to long-term memory and really comprehend the concepts, students need to do homework and practice working with those concepts over and over again. The third step in learning occurs when students study for tests. It's a much more intensive form of learning. Given the importance of active learning that occurs when doing homework and preparing for tests, let's talk more specifically about study habits and memorization techniques. The first strategy has to do with having good notes. Memorization begins with taking notes from reading or when the teacher lectures in class. So the first thing we need to do is make sure your child has good note-taking skills. If this is a weakness for your child, have your child borrow someone's notes so he can learn what good notes look like and how to begin taking better notes. If you're not sure who might take good notes, you can ask the teacher if she recommends a particular student. You could also have your child practice taking notes from a chapter in one of his books, and then you critique how thorough his notes are. If this is likely to result in conflict between you and your child, you could ask a school teacher to practice this with him or hire a tutor. Notes for a subject should be kept in one notebook in chronological order. One example of good notes might look like this: dating all notes, titling the notes so finding information later is easier, writing notes legibly, putting page numbers beside important concepts in case they need to refer back to their book for a more in-depth explanation, and underlining important information so it stands out and is found easily later on. If your child has a learning disability in written language, has fine motor problems, or has an auditory processing problem, you can request the teacher's notes so your child can listen more attentively. We want to use your child's strengths to learn the material, and we want children's grades to reflect their knowledge and mastery of subject content and not to reflect their disability. Next, once you have good notes, our second step is that students should begin the process of rewriting and working with the subject material, which is an active learning exercise. If it fits with the subject material, have your child create index cards on key terms, definitions, and concepts nightly, even a couple of weeks before the test. You can use regular size index cards and rubber band them together. Or you can buy ones that are secured by a ring so none of them are lost. These cards can be carried around and reviewed anywhere, in the car on the way to school, at grandma's, or as you run errands. Another very effective technique is rewriting notes starting a day or two before a test. Get another notebook or legal pad that is specifically for this purpose and have your child just rewrite her notes and flashcards over and over again. Review and recite the subject content frequently. As your child tries to learn the material, have him use the following helpful memorization techniques, which we'll now discuss in the next few strategies. Teach your child how to use acronyms to remember a series of things, lists, or steps. Acronyms are created by taking the first letter from a group of words to form a new word. Examples of common acronyms include NBA, or National Basketball Association, and LPGA, Ladies Professional Golf Association. Let's suppose that you have to memorize the names of oceans: Pacific, Atlantic, Indian, Arctic, and Southern Oceans. If your child is really having trouble remembering the names of them, take the first letter of each ocean and create a new word, PASIA, the P standing for Pacific, the A, Atlantic, S, Southern, I, Indian, and A for Arctic. Another example would be if your child has to memorize the 5 Great Lakes: Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior. You can form the word homes from this list, which can be a good memory trigger for later recall. So as you can see, the trick is helpful if your child is really stuck on remembering lists of things. Another useful memorization tactic is to make sentences. Like acronyms, you use the first letter of each word you are trying to remember. Instead of making a new word, though, you use the letters to make a sentence. This is particularly useful when remembering things in sequential order. Here's an example. Suppose you are trying to teach your child how to approach this math problem. 2 plus 5 times 3. The rules of math tell us that the order of things is to multiply and divide before you add and subtract. So in this problem, you will do the 5 times 3 to get 15, and then take the 2 plus 15 to get the final answer of 17. In order to help kids remember the sequence of this math rule, if they don't remember the rule, take the first letter of each of the main words to make a new sentence. My dear Aunt Sally. Then, when they have to recall this rule for a test, when they see the problem 5 plus 2 times 10, they can say, wait, I just can't go left to right. I need to remember the proper order of things. And the easy way I came up with to remember this was by saying, my dear Aunt Sally. Multiply and divide before you add and subtract. Remember, this can be a good trick for remembering things that are supposed to happen in a certain order. The next strategy reflects the fact that all of us have different learning styles, so incorporate as many of the 5 senses as possible when your child is studying. We've talked about some visual techniques already, such as reading and rewriting notes. Also, try to have your child actually visualize the things they are studying. In the case of the 5 oceans and Great Lakes we just talked about, visualize their location on a world map. Sketch a map out and then have your child fill in the names of the oceans while they talk aloud about where the bodies of water are. This will help commit these facts to long-term memory rather than just relying on rote memorization as we did in the prior 2 examples. For instance, if your child is learning about how the body digests food, after eating you might talk about the different things that are happening with the food in the body. For example, the food is churning in the stomach and the liver is producing bile to help with breaking down the fats in our food. Get a picture of the human body and help your child visualize the liver producing the bile and sending it to the gallbladder. Your child might also benefit from having her notes placed on a recording device. This taps into her auditory learning process. Try having her read her notes into the recording device because the more she works with the material, the more it will be committed to memory. Then she can play it back later to review it. When trying to memorize something, have your child recite the information aloud. Repeating information aloud can help commit the information to memory and give you and your child an idea as to how well she has learned it. Some students say that they know the test information and are surprised when they freeze and suddenly cannot come up with the right answer. For some, this freezing may be a result of test anxiety. For others, however, it is usually a result of overestimating how well they know the material. If your child recites the information aloud from memory, including answering questions when quizzed, defining words aloud, or using flashcards, it is often quite clear how well she knows it. Make her say it in a very conversational tone, like she talks about it every day, because you will know right away if she knows it well or not. If she stumbles in her responses, has to look up answers, or can only give a vague response, then that's a sign she needs to study more. For example, pick a concept that she's been having trouble with, and when she walks into the room, quiz her and tell her to just answer in a very fun way, like she was talking to a friend. Let's take a look at an example of this.
Quasia, what do you got? What do you got? All right. Looks like your first one is, why did the civil rights movement use nonviolence? And then the second part is, how successful was this tactic?
Well, the African Americans thought that if they...
Also, have your child teach someone else the material, even if it's the dog. If she can teach it, she knows the information well. Have your child apply concepts to everyday life. For instance, as your child learns about mammals and science, take a visit to the zoo. In children's zoos, there are often volunteers or employees on hand to answer questions, so encourage your child to tell them what he's learned in school. Try to do this with as many school concepts as possible, especially in the early years, to get your child excited about learning right from the start. So you probably already picked up on the fact that the common theme with all these study suggestions is repetition, repetition, repetition. School concepts and material need to be worked with over and over for children to learn and really understand things. If you try these strategies and they are still not working for you, it's time to consult with a psychologist, especially if your child continues to have the following problems: difficulty focusing, not completing assignments in a timely manner, skipping problems, poor grades, or significant frustration because of school problems. We hope you have found this video helpful. We will post updates on our website as more research is released on effective learning strategies. In the meantime, begin practicing these techniques to see if they make a difference. Thanks for watching.